Tonight, an unusual series of events at the trial of Robert Pickton. Confusion, then questions, and now the concerns of families of the victims. There's a rarely talked about tragedy that occurs in casinos. But tonight, one province wants it known how many gamblers try to kill themselves on the property.
I remember
90 years later,
the house began to shake.
Remaining survivors remember the Halifax explosion.
A terrific crash.
CTV News with Lloyd Robertson.
Good evening. After 10 months of testimony and 7 days of deliberations, there has been a stunning series of events at the multiple murder trial of Robert Pickton in New Westminster, BC. The day's drama began when the sequestered jury sent the judge a question, but their request for clarification created a lot of confusion and led to the suspension of deliberations while the judge tried to sort things out. CTV's Vancouver Bureau Chief Todd Battis has the latest on this complex case.
Oh, today's the day.
Today's the day?
Today's the day.
Yeah.
Victims' families arrived in the morning upbeat, certain the jury would return a verdict. On the 7th day of deliberations, jurors did come back to court, but with something else, a question for Justice James Williams. They wanted to know if they could convict Pickton if they felt he only indirectly killed one or more of the victims. That sparked some courtroom drama. A publication ban keeps us from reporting the back and forth between Crown and defense. The judge suspended deliberations. A couple of hours later, he brought the jury back and made a startling admission. He made a mistake. Williams said, "I have concluded that I was not sufficiently precise. I was in error with respect to 3 paragraphs of your charge." Rare, says criminal lawyer Mark Jette.
The jury's been out for days, and now they're being told that something they were told in the charge is not exactly accurate, and it is about an important part of the case. So that's a little bit different.
The judge changed his original instructions, telling the jury it can consider whether the accused serial killer shot some of the 6 women or played a significant role, but didn't pull the trigger. If you find that Mr. Pickton shot Miss Abbotsway, Miss Wilson, Miss Joesbury, or was otherwise an active participant in her killing, you should find that the Crown has proved this element. On the other hand, if you have a reasonable doubt, you must return a verdict of not guilty. The judge concluded, "I regret that I misinformed you. It was inadvertent. However, it is important that you be instructed properly as I'm able, and thus these amendments have been provided to you." He encouraged the jury to ask more questions if it was still unclear. Jurors returned to deliberations. Defense lawyer Adrian Brooks left court, offering his take on events.
You can never be surprised in a jury case.
Legal experts say today's developments could provide either side with grounds to seek an appeal. It certainly gave courtroom watchers a lot to talk about. Lloyd?
Thank you, Todd. CTV's Todd Battis. There was also a lot of confusion outside the courthouse today as friends and families of the murdered women reacted to the dramatic developments. CTV's National Affairs correspondent Lisa DeFlam joins us now with more on that. Lisa, how did the victims' families respond to the confusion of the day?
Well, they were very stressed out. It was on their faces all day long. You know, it's what they've been dreading, really. They all rushed back to the courtroom when they heard that the jury was being brought back in with a question. It's been so nerve-wracking. For hours, they had no idea which way this was going to go. And after so many months in that courtroom, they've almost become armchair lawyers. So they knew that if an error was admitted, the possibility of a mistrial existed. Some are trying to remain positive. Georgina Papin's sister said the judge made a mistake. He fixed it. The jury's back in there deliberating. It's not over yet. But Marnie Frey's father said, you know, everyone's getting testy inside the lobby of that courtroom, just waiting for this to end.
Obviously, they're hoping for a conviction, but are they preparing themselves in the event things don't go their way?
Well, I think that is really what keeps them up at night, Lloyd, is that concern. If not Robert Pickton, then who? And that, of course, plays right into the defense theory in all of this. They have their victim impact statements ready. They have felt from day one that the missing women case was not taken seriously, and there is grave concern that if Robert Pickton is not found guilty, then they will just be back at square one.
More agonizing waiting for them. Thank you, Lisa. CTV's Lisa LaFlamme reporting tonight from New Westminster, BC. In Ottawa, Karl-Heinz Schreiber came out swinging today. He was aiming at former Prime Minister Brian Mulroney, but at the end of the day, he appeared to have done more damage to his own credibility. For the first time, Schreiber suggested that Mulroney may have benefited financially from the controversial Airbus purchase. But the supposed source of his information flatly denied the story, and members of a Commons committee were visibly skeptical. More now from CTV's Ottawa Bureau Chief Robert Fife.
It's always new.
Karl-Heinz Schreiber came to Parliament without a police escort and without handcuffs. And keeping with past performances, he threw out more unproven accusations, claiming a Mulroney confidant asked him to funnel Airbus money into a Swiss bank account destined for the former Prime Minister.
I hear myself even today saying, well, what the hell has Mulroney to do with Airbus? And his answer was, are you naive?
But Schreiber offered no evidence.
I cannot say whether they get transferred money from there.
And Fred Doucette, who Schreiber says made the request, issued a statement saying the allegation is false. Schreiber's credibility also came under attack at the committee. Tory MPs demanded to know why he's fighting extradition to Germany, where he faces corruption charges.
Then why have you not gone back to face your accusers if you're innocent?
I recommend you go to the computer and look at human rights violation in Germany.
And then Schreiber claimed a massive conspiracy.
This is a conspiracy against you, then?
Yes, sure.
And that's from the Justice Department, the RCMP,
yes,
the German Justice...
The German prosecutors in Augsburg, yes, yes.
He was asked why he wrote a letter to Mulroney last year, clearing the former Prime Minister of any wrongdoing.
You are in my position, you have a wife, you have all the children, what would you have done?
So you're willing to sign anything that's given
At that moment, yes, when Brian Mulroney said he needed it for the Prime Minister to fix the whole thing and go to an inquiry, yes, I would sign anything.
Schreiber's credibility took a major hit, even from opposition MPs.
He obviously is a person who has serious problems with accepting what is the truth.
His agenda undoubtedly is to remain in Canada and not be extradited to Germany.
Mulroney gets to tell his side of the story next Thursday. And friends say he'll admit to making a serious mistake in accepting $300,000 in cash from Schreiber after he left office. But he'll maintain it was for legitimate work. Lloyd.
So, Bob, where are we with this tonight? We've had 3 days of Schreiber before the committee, 6 hours of testimony, confusion, contradiction. He's back up next Tuesday. Does he really have anything more to say?
Lloyd, don't ask me to predict what Karl-Heinz Schreiber is going to say or do. He's already said he didn't give any Airbus kickbacks to Mr. Mulroney. He didn't give kickbacks to any other politicians. And that Mr. Mulroney didn't lobby any federal government for that $300,000. So I'm not sure what Mr. Mulroney has done wrong, but I'm sure he'll have some more allegations to say on Tuesday.
And as you point out, Brian Mulroney gets his turn next Thursday. Presumably, that's going to be a rough ride from the committee.
Well, you know, actually, Lloyd, the Liberals tried to block Mr. Mulroney's appearance until late January after the independent investigator sets the terms of reference for a public inquiry. They were afraid that if he shows up Thursday and it shows he didn't do anything illegal, that the public inquiry wouldn't be held. The NDP wouldn't go along with this. But in terms of that meeting next Thursday, it's going to be a great partisan show to watch, and the opposition will be going hard at Mr. Mulroney. But he's a brawler and a big boy, and he'll know how to defend himself.
Right. Thanks, Bob. CTV's Robert Fife. A follow-up now on a story we reported last night about a sudden shortages of medical isotopes used to diagnose cancer and other diseases. As one expert put it today, the solution is desperate now. By next week, it could be catastrophic. Tests for thousands of patients across North America will be delayed indefinitely. The problem arose when the Atomic Energy of Canada's plant at Chalk River, Ontario, was closed due to safety concerns, which cut off 2/3 of the world's supply of isotopes. The shutdown will last into the new year. Suppliers around the world are scrambling to fill the gap, but they say they can't meet the demand. In Omaha, Nebraska, new details have emerged about the teenager who turned a busy shopping mall into a killing field yesterday. 19-year-old Robert Hawkins slaughtered 8 employees and shoppers before taking his own life. Hawkins was a high school dropout who had recently lost his job and his girlfriend. And while acquaintances say he'd been making strides in battling depression, nothing, they say, could have foretold the mass murder he was about to commit. More from CTV's Tom Walters.
911, what's your emergency?
It's a call for help that needs no words.
Hello, 911.
And when the shooting stops, home video records a stream of stunned shoppers and employees heading to the exits. What has just happened, still a blur, even to Jeff Schaffer.
It did not dawn on me that I had actually been shot until I saw the blood on my fingers.
Schaffer could still walk. Others could not. 9 never will again. Overnight, stretchers arrived to remove their bodies, casualties of something incomprehensible.
One of the most horrific tragedies ever to occur in the state of Nebraska.
But it didn't just occur. Someone did this. 19-year-old Robert Hawkins took the lives of 8 strangers in a series of random and merciless executions.
I never thought he would do something that extreme, you know.
Friends say Hawkins had been depressed, troubled, estranged from his own family. He had been taken in by Deborah Maruka Kovac's family.
We just took him in as one of ours.
Hawkins had lost his job at McDonald's. Distraught, he phoned Maruka Kovac.
So we told him to come home, that we wanted to talk about it, and he said it was too late.
Too late for so many. At a prayer service today, there were candles for the dead, including Hawkins.
Robert Hawkins.
Police searched the home of the gunman's stepfather and seized a weapon. They believe the one used in the massacre was stolen from here. But the bigger questions remain much harder to answer.
It would be speculation to try to figure out what the motive may have been.
The only real clue to Hawkins' motive may be in his suicide note, in what he said about himself.
That his whole life he'd been a piece and now he'll be famous.
Instead, he is infamous. To be remembered not for the person he was, but for the thing he became. Tom Walters, CTV News, Los Angeles.
Flags on all federal buildings in Canada were lowered to half-mast today as part of the National Day of Action on Violence Against Women. It's a day created by Parliament in response to the Montreal massacre, which happened 18 years ago today.
Maryse Leclerc, 23 ans.
In Montreal, close to 100 people gathered in the bitter cold as the names of 14 women were read out and white ribbons placed on monuments in their memory. Similar ceremonies were held in cities all across the country. The victims were all students at l'École Polytechnique, killed because of their gender, stalked and murdered by deranged gunman Marc Lapine. Concerns about a controversial chemical have one Canadian company acting alone. Some products are off the shelf until all the facts are in. Still to come. The fight against a potentially dangerous chemical compound often found in food containers, baby bottles, and toys received a big boost today. CTV News has learned that acting on its own, a major Canadian retailer, Mountain Equipment Co-op, will pull certain products containing bisphenol A from its store shelves. The surprising move comes as Health Canada and the Ontario government decide what to do about the controversial material that's used to harden plastics. CTV's David Aiken has this exclusive report.
Mountain Equipment Co-op is one of the country's largest sporting goods retailers with more than 2.5 million customers. And it's now become the first retailer in Canada to remove some products containing a chemical some say is linked to cancer and other diseases. In a statement released to CTV News, the co-op says, "Inconclusive science and regulatory uncertainty presently surrounds bisphenol A, or BPA, a synthetic chemical that is an essential building block of polycarbonate plastic. For these reasons, Mountain Equipment Co-op has stopped selling polycarbonate water bottles and food containers until guidance is provided by the Government of Canada on the health risks posed by BPA." But a plastics industry spokesman believes the co-op is being needlessly cautious.
Consumer products made from bisphenol A have a very long track record of safe use and an equally long record of safety testing.
Environmentalists point to 100 independent studies that have shown small doses of bisphenol A can cause developmental problems, cancer, obesity, and early puberty.
We've got study after study showing that it's harmful, particularly for children. There are safe and available alternatives ready on the market
Other Canadian retailers are also taking a close look at the issue. Walmart Canada, for example, says, "We are keen on Health Canada's guidance, but have also placed this firmly on our radar as we engage chemical specialists such as vendors, NGOs, and environmental groups as part of our overall sustainability program."
It's just a matter of time, and not very much time, before this chemical is off the market.
Health Canada is expected to complete its review by May. In the meantime, Ontario's government is also reviewing the safety of bisphenol A. David Aiken, CTV News, Ottawa.
One person was killed today at Marieville, Quebec, southeast of Montreal, when a school bus and tractor-trailer collided at an intersection. Police say the bus driver died in hospital. There were 6 children aged 10 and 12 aboard the bus. None was seriously hurt. The truck driver also escaped without serious injury. Now, here's a quick glance at how the dollar and the markets did today. We'll be back shortly. First, this look at what's coming up in local news. For many adults, betting on games of chance is just a form of harmless entertainment. For others, it can be deadly. That's why a number of social activists are praising a court ruling that will lift a veil of secrecy on gambling-related deaths at Quebec casinos. After a lengthy legal battle, Lotto Quebec has been ordered to hand over its files on suicides and suicide attempts that may be linked to excessive gambling. CTV's Jed Kahane reports.
If you want to hear about the pain compulsive gambling can cause, talk to Did Belizaire. 4 years ago, after a long night losing at the Montreal casino, he walked out the door at sunrise and headed straight to the Jacques Cartier Bridge.
Called my girlfriend, asked her for a pardon, and just jumped.
Suicides related to gambling are a fact of life in Canada. In a single year here, the coroner's office counted 32. But for years, activists have been trying to find out how many suicides or suicide attempts there have been inside Quebec's casinos.
Because for years, the Montreal casino has been in denial that there are suicides, and there isn't a casino in North America that doesn't have that as part of their problem.
Lotto Quebec has only ever confirmed one suicide. Daniel Naudi lost his life savings at Montreal's casino, then went back one night not to gamble, but to kill himself in its parking lot, to make it clear, according to his son, who he thought was to blame.
He told me that, he said, that's my problem, and I want to make them pay for that.
Now a Quebec court has ordered Lotto Quebec to open its books and make public ambulance reports and internal security documents related to injuries or deaths on its property. Lotto Quebec won't discuss the ruling, but the lawyer who won the case calls it a big step towards a more informed public debate.
We will have serious information for the first time in the country.
Lotto Quebec had said it didn't want to release its internal reports because that might help organized crime groups by revealing how its investigators do their job. Belizaire believes there's another reason Lotto Quebec fought so hard to keep the materials secret.
It's not good for business, and like any business, they're going to try to protect it.
Those who fought to see the documents say with any luck, they'll be released within days. Jed Kahane, CTV News, Montreal.
And in other news tonight, a witness at the Air India inquiry says testimony from James Bartleman that there had been advance warning of the 1985 bombing was fabricated. Pierre Lecomte, a former employee of Canada's electronic eavesdropping agency, later toned down his remarks, saying Bartleman, a former senior intelligence analyst with External Affairs, had made an honest mistake. In Texas, Republican presidential candidate Mitt Romney sought to reassure Americans worried about his religious beliefs. Romney, who is a Mormon, asked voters to honor the U.S. tradition of religious tolerance. Polls have suggested a majority of evangelical Christians have concerns about a Mormon becoming president. And in Florida, the launch of the space shuttle Atlantis was postponed for a second time today. A problem with a fuel sensor forced the delay. Early indications were that NASA may try again tomorrow, but officials now believe the launch will come on Saturday at the earliest. When we return, a devastating moment in Canadian history, remembering the Halifax explosion as time takes its toll on the handful of survivors. Next on CTV National News. And finally for us tonight, most of us tend to think of the world wars as times when cities in Europe and Asia were devastated. Many people don't realize that it happened here in Canada too. 90 years ago today, during the First World War, Halifax and neighboring communities were shattered by what was, at the time, the largest man-made explosion in human history. CTV's Donnell Balfour recounts the story with help from people who were there.
It's been 90 years, but for the few remaining survivors of the Halifax explosion, it's like yesterday.
I was eating my breakfast at the time and all the windows came in on me, you know. And my mother got thrown over the corner with the stove on top of her. And she was all right.
So many were not. Nearly 2,000 people were killed after a French munition ship collided with a Belgian relief vessel in the Halifax harbour.
On Canadian soil, it was the largest disaster. It was the biggest area that had been affected. It was actually the biggest man-made explosion till Hiroshima.
In that instant, Wilfred Creighton lost 6 family members.
The house began to shake and it seemed to get dark, and then there was a terrific crash.
9,000 others were terribly injured, maimed or blinded.
Oh, they ruined around, and the smell of burning flesh in the buildings was sickly.
Homes, schools, factories, docks and ships were destroyed by the blast. Mary Murphy remembers playing in the ruins of her home.
We used to go in these empty foundations and we'd say, well, this must have been the living room and this must have been the kitchen.
There are only about 20 survivors of the Halifax explosion alive today.
They know what it was like. They experienced it.
With so few left, they worry their legacy will fade when they're no longer around to tell their tales.
The diagrams of the collision.
Historian Janet Kitt says young Canadians need to be taught about the explosion.
I think eventually, at least I hope so, I'm certainly pushing for it, it will be on the curriculum, at least in Halifax. I don't see why it shouldn't be all over Canada.
So that people will still gather and remember, not only on this Halifax hill, but from coast to coast. Donnell Balfour, CTV News, Halifax.
And that's the kind of day it's been on this Thursday, December the 6th. I'm Lloyd Robertson. For all of us here in the National Newsroom, good night. For some of you, your local CTV News is coming right up.
CTV News, Canada's #1 newscast.
Good morning. Good morning.
Jeff.
Oh my gosh.
Beverly.
It's kind of a rush.
Shinji. And Marcy.
So don't go anywhere.
4 great reasons to wake up happy. Don't miss Canada AM weekday morning. Saturday.
I am just a lookalike.
Why celebrity doubles
You talking to me?
struggle to survive.
What am I? What is me?
Their make-believe lives.
If this is life, I'm not interested.
Watch Double Identity, Saturday at 7 on CTV.